Hello everyone, my name is Zachary Fahlsing-Cappelletti and this is my final for Architecture 170B. Architects and developers have a bad habit of always wanting to start completely fresh with their projects. Large-scale development almost always begins by completely clearing everything which came before and creating a flat, contextless, ahistorical site. This loss of history is a loss for all of society. My goal as a designer is to help reverse this trend. Living around historical structures is beneficial to everyone. It reminds us of our history, which provides context for the present and a connection between older and younger generations. It provides aesthetic contrast and beauty, and allows for people with very different aesthetic preferences to coexist happily. And by so visually showing the changes that society has undergone, it gives weight and meaning to the hard work that has fueled our technological and cultural progress. Additionally, reusing old spaces efficiently means less necessary construction, less climate impact, and potentially cheaper costs. This architectural trend of clearing sites and building fresh gained significant following during the modernist movement when influential figures like Le Corbusier advocated for a complete separation from history. Entire cities and communities were planned as historyless, future-focused population centers. After modernism, during the postmodern movements, there was some return to history, but even this generally manifested itself as entirely new structures which made vague, symbolic allusions, like Charles Moore's Italian Pavilion or Kengo Kuma's M2 building. I believe this is a superficial nod to history which doesn't substantively help foster collective memory. Contemporary parametric movements also generally use history as window dressing as best, focusing instead on creating new computer-generated forms which must stand on their own without interacting directly with an urban context. Today, architecture generally exists as a combination of all of these movements, and this means that complete demolition and entirely new construction is still king. The issue is especially personal to me because this historical demolition is extremely common right here in Berkeley. We're fortunate in this city to have historical architecture all around us, covering much of campus, downtown, and the Berkeley Hills. However, in a reasonable quest to build more housing, many old storefronts, offices, and entertainment venues across Berkeley have been condemned and destroyed. For example, the Anchor House dorm exists on top of a Walter Ratcliffe design garage, and People's Park has been completely obliterated in favor of another UC dorm. As a designer, I want to build housing for Berkeley residents to drive down costs and provide homes for people without them. I think people like myself are in a unique position to design this housing as a layer on top of the already existing Berkeley urban fabric. And this is an opportunity that I hope to take head on as a designer. I plan to rectify this issue by designing based on what already exists and not using demolition to completely start anew. I don't disagree that new construction is often necessary to fit the constantly changing needs of society. However, I think that creating new useful space and keeping the older existing structures aren't mutually exclusive. The goal is not to keep the urban fabric of Berkeley exactly the same. This is neither practical nor beneficial for society. However, even with adaptation and change, the vibes of a building and of a neighborhood can stay the same. The strategy of adaptive reuse is in no way a new one, and examples already exist from across the country and across the world. In West Berkeley, it's already common to see old industrial structures that have been fully adapted to offices, studios, and housing. And this is a good example of the layered construction which both adds character to spaces, preserves the historical memories of neighborhoods, and can create more useful space for society. The strategy is very common in former industrial centers, and specific industries have formed up to specifically manifest this reuse. And I think that this could be more common in commercial spaces like downtown Berkeley. One issue with areas like this, though, is height, because high-rise buildings require much more complicated and specific structural systems, and are therefore much harder to combine with pre-existing systems. If a high-rise structure is the only economically viable type in a certain space, then complex interlocking of old and new is often necessary. But these are design challenges that can be met, and skilled designers like myself will be necessary to tackle this challenge. In places like Berkeley's downtown, even condemned and abandoned sites still exist as useful and interesting facades, and often have structural components that can be reused as well. I would strive to keep the original street level views and use facades and intact structural systems as much as possible. Entirely new structures can be built directly even on top of these old facades and structures, and examples from around the world exist, such as Zaha Hadid's Port House and the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. Other times, the new structure and program can be placed directly on top of the old with minimal exterior influence and complete interior usefulness. There are already examples of projects which have accomplished exactly this in Berkeley itself. In West Berkeley, the Sawtooth Building shows how an interior renovation of an industrial space can create new commercial opportunities without sacrificing the historical character of a structure. Downtown, the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive renovation by DS+R preserved the original white warehouse structure of the archive and added a large contemporary space which clashes stylistically but is a great representation of history and memory in Berkeley. People have fought to keep these trends going, and it seems like there may have been some success. The 1914 built California Theater was set to be demolished in favor of a large apartment building, but after community activism, the design was changed to preserve the current facade and include theater functionality. The United Artists Theater on Shattuck will share a similar fate. These moves mirror my own design philosophy well. Overall, I hope to be a leader in creating a new urban fabric which combines old and new, young and old, complex and simple, and strong and weak. I think these buildings are not only one object, but a series of objects which exist on top of each other, each piece pushing and pulling on all the others. And when designers embrace this, it makes the city a living collection of experience and memory, rather than a soulless factory in which the residents are simply cogs. This inherently means that my designs may not maximize efficiency or cost, but they do prioritize the human experience above all, especially that can be shared across generations. And I think that this will create a better future for Berkeley and for the country as a whole.